Let's talk about Family Guy. Yep, that absolute phenomenon which has kind of fallen off the face of the earth over the last couple of years, even though it's still being made to this day. And because of that, most people are not interested in the show anymore and have forgotten just how good it was in its prime. Yep, I, just like everybody else, was rather hooked onto the Griffins. You got the father figure Peter with his stupid nature, his even more stupid son Chris, the flirtatious yet loving mum Lois, the insecure and often picked on daughter Meg, the intellectual anthropomorphic dog Brian, and of course the mad scientist of the family, the 1-year-old Stewie Griffin, along with all the other awesome characters, of course. For a time, it seemed that the world talked about nothing but Family Guy, and rightfully so. A show that survived 2 cancellations, kind of, and a show that, as already stated in its prime, was and still is a really good show to watch. It's been a while, so I decided to dig deep and try to remind myself why that was. Why and how did a show that constantly got itself rejected end up being a household name across the globe, with endless amounts of merch and, of course, video games too? Yep, we're gonna cover them all. Hi everybody, I'm Daniel Robertson, aka DJ Slope from Slope's Game Room, and this is Family Guy, the history and the games. And guys, before going ahead, I want to give another big massive shout out to this video's sponsor, Dashlane. In case you are someone like me that constantly forgets their online logins because it has to include an uppercase character and a lowercase character and a symbol and a number until all you have left is the same bloody password you had in the first place, but starting with a capital letter and ending in #123. If this is you, just like it was for me, then I highly suggest you go and check out Dashlane. It's a service that's made for people like us. And best of all, it is 100% completely for free on your first device. No credit card, no hassle, no weird signing up or anything like that. If you use the link down below, you will also get 30 days for free of their premium service. And come on, that ain't bad, is it?
Thank you.
These days, having all of the ease of signing into multiple websites and having to remember all of your information when doing online shopping is not only easy with Dashlane, but it is completely safe too, as Dashlane uses a decentralizing security system where each and every account is encrypted separately. So go and click that link. No hassle, no credit card, no worries whatsoever. Thank you very much, Dashlane, for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back to the video. Back in 1970, a couple of hippies who eventually become a teacher by the name of Robert Milton and a school administrator going by the name of Ann Perry met, fell in love, got married the same year, moved to Kent, Connecticut in 1972, and 1 year later had a little baby boy, Seth MacFarlane, born on October the 26th, 1973. According to numerous interviews I've read, I'm sure it will come to the surprise of nobody when I tell you that animation and cartoons became a big part of Seth's life from an incredibly early age. And where most parents for the time would push this sort of thing aside, Seth proudly reminisces about how his parents actually kept drawings as early as the age of 2 years old that he would draw of classic Hanna-Barbera shows such as the Flintstones and Woody Woodpecker. For those that watched my Ren and Stimpy episodes, just like John Kay's early days, the surreal experience of watching drawings come to life had become a bit of an addiction for Seth. And over the years, as the copycatting of his favourite cartoon heroes got better and better, according to an interview from inside the actor's studio at the age of 5, he'd already worked out exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to be an animator. There was just one problem: how to animate. That's when his parents managed to actually find a book on the subject from a library a few towns over, and this was when Seth started to get quite into flip books. The obsession grew and grew, and growing up in his house, taking a lot of comedic inspiration from his very edgy mother, Seth started growing into his own. He created his first ever animated short at school called Space Pirates, and by the age of only 9 years old, that dream of becoming an animator had actually already begun. This is Walter Crouton, a comic book that Seth created at the age of only 9 years old, and he actually sold it every single week to the local newspaper Good Times Dispatch. If you want an insight into the first ever steps into the world of Family Guy, then look no further than this. That unique humour of two characters telling a story, then all of a sudden seeing that extremely random story play out, which just so happens to be a quick funny gag, take place right away, interrupting the flow of the episode, aka a cutaway, all originated right here. One week you'll see a bee painting a target on the nose of Walter for another bee to come and attack it, and the following week you'll see the strip's main character meeting a deaf genie and asking for a pot of money, a big cake and a new phone, but instead receiving a pot of honey, a big snake and a new bone. It's silly, it's innocent, it makes you chuckle, and honestly, it's perfectly fine. You can be damn sure that if I read this newspaper, I'd look forward to these little strips every single week. And I'm sure plenty of families in the area of all ages did exactly that back in the day. Thankfully, Seth continued doing these little comic strips in exchange for $5 a week, which eventually went all the way up to $10 a week, for almost an entire decade. As his talents continued to get more and more refined, so did his questioning of life. His family were not exactly a religious group, however, with this town being so small and to be part of the community, Seth and his family would still attend church every Sunday. And in one of his earliest brushes with controversy, after being completely baffled by the idea of sacramental bread and wine representing the body and blood of Christ, he created a comic strip showing Walter Crouton going to mass and asking if he could have fries with that. This angered the local priest, who sent a letter to young Seth shaming him for creating such an awful illustration. Anyway, Seth continued on, gaining a keen interest in musical scores as he found them to be far more complex than the popular music found on the radio, and due to the church's local drama groups, he got very interested in theatre too, and did quite a few musical performances throughout his teens as well. For fans of classic episodes of Family Guy, it's all very obvious that this too was a big inspiration for what the show would eventually become. At the time, Disney were at the top of their game, once again releasing hits like The Little Mermaid and the excellent Rescuers Down Under, which took the world by storm. And just like all young animators for the time, Seth's ultimate goal was to work for that legendary company. However, another phenomenon was right around the corner, and that was going to inspire him even more. You see, Disney, like I said, were blowing up, releasing what are essentially animated musicals, which obviously Seth had a keen interest in, but at the same time, now that he had grown into a young adult at college doing stand-up comedy on the side, spouting his unique, dry and often close to the wire sense of humour passed down by his mother to whoever fancied listening, he noticed a void. These worlds, they're just not gonna work together. How wrong he was. For anybody too young to have experienced this, let me just paint an early 1990s Simpsons world for you. Sure, animated shows aimed at both adults and kids had come and gone with little success in the past. It stinks. But The Simpsons did something that no others could. It fascinated kids with the stereotypical idiot dad and radical 90s son, but it also pushed its way into primetime TV and garnered a huge audience with adults. Not only with its perfectly written stories, but also its often for the time edgy humour. They may look a little rough around the edges by today's standards, but the quality of episodes such as I Love Lisa, One Fish, Two Fish, Blowfish, Bluefish, Marge vs. the Monorail, my personal favourite, The Call of the Simpsons, as it was the first one I ever watched, are still all perfect episodes that please not just the entire family, but the entire world. And well, Seth was no different. This was what he needed, a show to open the doors to the kind of animated show that he wanted to make, and in time, obviously, it did just that.
scared the crap out of me. I'm Seth MacFarlane, Associate Production Coordinating Directorial Associate Managing Departmental Divisional Office Supervisor of the International Network Amalgamation Distributors Corporation Management Organizational Association of Men Who Like Pussy. I'm here to tell you about a fantabulous new series concept I've developed. It's called The Life of Larry, and it centers around the madcap, maniacal misadventures and general mishaps of a lovable but tactless lower middle-class mokes by the name of Larry Cummings, with his ever-present supportive wife Lois, his slightly oversized son, Milt, and his incisive, cynical dog, Steve. Let's look at a scene. And hey, keep an eye out for the outrageous Star Trek parody. Captain's log, stardate 8169.7. The Enterprise has just completed a routine survey mission in the Gamma Fallopia star system. Mr. Sulu, ahead warp back to 6.
Captain, sensors are picking up a planetary mass which does not appear on any of our star charts.
My God, a totally new world, rife with fresh challenges for a bold, brash young whippersnapper like myself. Mr. Sulu, ahead warp 9.
What do you think they eat?
Oh, yes, I don't know. It's some kind of like space jerky or something, I guess.
Yeah, because they're obviously, well, I mean, Shatner is obviously, getting fed fairly well. I mean, somebody's seeing to that.
Yeah, I think what happens is he eats his food, and then whatever Spock can't finish, he eats that too.
Oh, right. Where did you hear that?
Episode 65.
Oh.
This is a short film created by Seth that, although his college was a little critical of, pointing out that he'd basically filled it with way too many fart jokes, couldn't deny the comedic impact that it had on people that actually watched it. They took it upon themselves to send this little demo over to Hanna-Barbera, who liked it so much that they actually offered Seth a job. At the time, they had an excellent show called What a Cartoon that put a whole lot of responsibilities into the hands of animators. These were one-off 8-minute long cartoons that were completely unique and original, and I'm sure it'll be mentioned again in the future on this channel for the History in the Game series, as it also launched so many other great shows, such as the Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, Courage and the Cowardly Dog, and the oh so good Dexter's Laboratory. And obviously, although not straight away, yep, it kind of also launched Family Guy too. His short cartoon called Life with Larry, although a tad more classic cartoony compared to Family Guy, obviously was the next big step towards his magnum opus. But for Hanna-Barbera, or to be more specific, Cartoon Network, his time was yet to come. There were some murmurs of the show becoming a typical Cartoon Network series, however Fox was also interested. So, while Seth worked in scripting and storyboarding for other Hanna-Barbera cartoons, he actually accepted a $40,000 pilot offer from Fox, which he worked on for the next 6 months after work at home. It was a hardcore time for Seth, working until the early hours of every single morning on this new pilot, then going into Hanna-Barbera to script for his 9-to-5 job. According to an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, on the way to show off his finally finished pilot to 20th Century Fox, he almost crashed his car with exhaustion. It was an opportunity that he just didn't want to pass up, and he made sure to make the most of it. He took it in, they liked it, and they greenlit it for another pilot. However, originally it was quite a bit different. The idea, similar to how The Simpsons actually started out, would be that this next pilot would be spliced into 4 little 3-minute pieces and put into an episode of Mad TV. The 4 clips would need to all link together to make one story, and if the audience liked it, then there was a chance that this would actually become its own show. However, in the end, that pilot just ended up being so good that they never actually ended up releasing this first episode this way, and instead it was just stamped for approval to go live on January the 13th of 1999 as its own thing. Instantly, the show was a success. Thankfully, it was being played straight after The Simpsons, which was directly after the Super Bowl, giving it 22 million eyes facing the right way.
About friends.
All right, Joe, way to earn that parking space.
It's about life.
We have a gang shooting on 3rd and Main, 3 wounded, 1 dead.
Is it me or is rap music just getting lazier?
It's about time.
It's broccoli.
For Fox's newest arrival.
Who the hell do you think you are?
Family Guy.
I am the biggest loser I know.
I've had my share of disappointments too.
It's a girl.
Can you check again?
Family Guy premieres next Sunday after an all-new Simpsons on Fox.
Yes, almost by default, Family Guy was obviously going to be a success. But sadly, it didn't last long. It's hard to believe that a show as loved as you think it may have been didn't exactly pull in the views after that first episode. Don't get me wrong, it did well, but it was incredibly inconsistent, and because of this, it actually got cancelled by the end of the second season by the head of Fox not completely happy with the numbers he was seeing. However, shortly after, Gail Berman took over his role as the top dog at Fox, and she still saw potential in Family Guy and decided to give it one final chance. That final chance was season 3, and yep, still not good enough for Fox. As Seth continued on at the company working on other shows, including a failed sitcom pilot called Simon, which honestly never even left the ground, everyone was under the impression that Family Guy was simply over. But over on Adult Swim, Family Guy was actually still being aired. You see, Fox had struck a deal with Cartoon Network's late night show, giving them the 50 episodes of Family Guy essentially for free in exchange for promotion of the Family Guy DVDs. Plus, they also got to air the exclusive final episode that never got shown on Fox before it was cancelled. And because of this, not only were fans flocking to watch these reruns, but the sales of the DVDs were absolutely massive. It was so apparent that Family Guy didn't exactly have the biggest Simpsons-esque fan base, but it did indeed have a loyal fan base. And that loyal fan base were very vocal, letting their wallets do the talking. This brought the series back once again, as Adult Swim were even interested in the possibility of purchasing Family Guy for Adult Swim. However, Fox snuck it back and, well, the rest is history. If you ask me, the first 6 to 7 seasons really are quite incredible. The show went places that no others dared. I don't mean that in a controversial sense. I mean, sure, it did push a few boundaries, but, so did all of its competitors to a degree. Nope, Family Guy took liberties, amazing liberties that only somebody with a history and a set of interests such as Seth MacFarlane could come up with. Family Guy, as of the making of this episode, is, like I said, still going. Seth himself is still the voice actor for a good amount of the characters, but he hasn't worked on the show properly since 2010. When the show came back after that final cancellation, so did Seth, but his talents were spread so incredibly thin. He wrote and starred in 3 movies, released a few albums, and produced a couple of sort of spin-offs too. This stretched the whole team incredibly thin, and because of all of this, honestly, when I see Family Guy now, I see a worked up, tired show that sadly is way past its prime. And honestly, in more recent episodes that I have seen, it's a little bit of an annoyance. It's hard to explain. I seriously love seasons, 4 to 7, but my god, the fandom was extreme. The same thing's happening right now with Rick and Morty. It's not a case of me wanting to be a unique flower spouting off that I liked it first, like some petulant internet troll. It was just a small piece of a much larger problem. The original team were mostly gone, or might as well have been gone in all honesty, and because of that, the show is a shell of what it once was. Out of everything I could go back and watch, it took me a while to actually go back and watch Family Guy. The entire mess that Family Guy had become was, well, a bit boring to me. But when I did go back for this very video, it was awesome. Some of those episodes during 4 and 7 really are the best of the best and deserve to stand head and shoulders between Three-Eyed Fish and of course Barbra Streisand as some of the best animated episodes on TV. If you're in the same boat as me, not really understanding why you fell out of love with Family Guy, seriously guys, go back and watch it again. It really does still hold up. It was a great show with exceptional talent behind it, and thankfully, even though the whole Seth bubble seriously got way out of control, I mean, come on, did anybody really have a hardcore connection to the bloody Cleveland show, for Christ's sake? There's just no denying that this bad boy was good. Bloody good, full of iconic moments and characters that you can bet your last dollar, and a lot of fans did, that Fox merched the hell out of it with toys, figures, Christmas decorations, overpriced calendars, board games, inflatables, you name it. If it had a giggity reference on it or an angry pointing monkey on it, fans lapped it up. And you know what else they lapped up? Video games. So before we go on our little video game journey, let's drop a couple of oddities for you. You've got Family Guy DVD Blast, a trivia-based DVD game involving 10 levels about the show, each with 5 questions that get repeated every single time you play it. And then of course you got the LCD game, Stewie's Pinball, that it's essentially Game of the Year, right? So yeah, let's move on to the real stuff. The first real Family Guy video game was actually back in 2006 when 2K Games, the right holders, got high voltage software to create the simply named Family Guy video game. Let me tell you right now that this is kind of a hidden gem. I mean, seriously, sure, it's got plenty of average traits that were all too common for the time, but after watching those classic episodes, I finally played this game for the first time, and I was genuinely surprised at how well they captured the TV show's likeness. It came out on the PlayStation 2, original Xbox and PSP, and well, if you ask me, considering the game came out in 2006, I actually think it looks pretty awesome. Very rarely does the animation go all weird. I mean, it does from time to time, but for the most part, the look, the style, the voice acting, and of course the humour is actually all spot on. You play as Peter, Stewie and Brian, all giving unique play styles to their levels. Peter is probably the weakest in his 2.5D brawler levels, Stewie is next up with his more action-based ray gun levels, and Brian has a more stealthy set of levels too. As you play through the game, you don't just choose one of these styles, but instead you play one after the other, which may seem a bit frantic, but actually fits the style of the show quite nicely. Heck, you also have plenty of cutaways too that act as a sort of mini-game, breaking up the gameplay even more. Look, you're not going to love the game, but fans of the show I think will be pleasantly surprised at how well they pulled this off. By 2006 standards, at least, they did it justice. It got mixed reviews upon release, and I think, yeah, that's probably about right. 7 out of 10 is pretty much a perfect score for a game like this. If you like Family Guy, go and get it. Right, what's next? Well, actually, it's not technically a video game, but it is technically the best game on the whole list. Family Guy Pinball by Stern is a pinball machine that I was actually pretty privileged to go and play. The game's main gimmick is having a mini pinball machine inside this main pinball machine, which is controlled by Stewie, or at least it looks like that. And if you manage to light up every character in this mini mode, you get multi-ball, which I was able to do after quite a few attempts. There's also a lot of emphasis on kicking the can, which pops up close to the Drunken Clam pub, often featured in the show, and Meg, well, you get points for hitting Meg too. There is quite a lot in this cabinet, and I think it gives plenty of fan service too. Okay, so we've done the best and we've actually done the worst too, both pinball games. And next up we've got Family Guy Uncensored. It's a pretty interesting set of mini games, to be fair, that play quite nicely. You get to play as loads of different characters from the show, and they all play perfectly fine. Sure, the game is a tad throwaway, but it captures the art style perfectly fine, and none of the mini games outstay their welcome. It's worth checking out if you're curious, but yeah, I wouldn't lose too much sweat over it. Glue Mobile, the people that made this game, actually came back for a second time with Family Guy Time Warped, a game that again does indeed look alright, but yeah, it's insanely bare bones. It's not bad, it's just the definition of a bog standard licensed game. You complete a level and then you get to see a completely out of context clip from the show. Ha ha ha, how funny is that? Thankfully, as we move from mobile phone games briefly in 2012, we actually got the very short-lived Family Guy online game, which was essentially a Family Guy MMORPG. Originally, the game was to be made for Facebook, but as the dev team wanted to attract not just casual gamers, but also hardcore gamers, it was decided that this would be running 100% in browser. It was free to play, and honestly, it looks, damn fine. Plenty of work went into this one for sure. Ever wanted to walk around the real house of the Griffins? Well, this is probably one of the best ways to do it. Except, you can't do it anymore, because it lasted less than 1 year. You see, the problem was the gameplay. It was boring and monotonous. You essentially had a list of fetch quests for your character that was so obviously on the nose it was painful to watch. If someone told me that the development studio after making the game had the game pulled out from underneath them and the entire story and actual gameplay was shoehorned in by a room full of overpriced suits looking to get the most money possible, I'd believe it. Family Guy Online may have been a bit of a stupid idea, but it did have promise. Beta testers started jumping into the game back on April the 17th, 2012, and on December 21st, the very same year, it was announced that the fetch quest in exchange for 30-second sound clips from the show and an advert would be closing down, and all purchases made within the last 60 days would be refunded. Next up, Family Guy makes its way back to consoles with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 release of Family Guy Back to the Multiverse.
Bertram's back for revenge.
Brian, this is bad.
And he's called in his minions. Now Stewie and Brian must go.
Back to the multiverse.
Evil mares.
This is for making fun of me in preschool.
Santas.
I'm a bad guy now, so I'm gonna have to kill you.
Pirates.
Yeah!
Space chickens. More chickens.
First one to shoot a guy in the junk wins.
Oh, come on, man. You're sick. You know, okay, maybe just one.
Defeat the freaks of the multiverse.
Dude, you suck!
To save our world from total annihilation. Family Guy Back to the Multiverse. Available now. Rated M for mature.
I can't help feeling like this is somehow Meg's fault.
Again, I actually think they did pretty well with the art style on this. It actually looks, quite nice considering it's a 3D re-rendering of a classic 2D show. And in the game, you play as either Stewie or Brian. I found Brian the best to play with. In fact, after playing with Brian, you don't really want to have to go back to Stewie if you don't need to. The game is based around the utterly fantastic Road to the Multiverse episode, which was a highly praised episode where Brian and Stewie went to several different dimensions, and in each one, they was completely redesigned. This let the game designers do the same thing with this game, and as a result, each level is incredibly unique. However, sadly, the third-person gameplay is monotonous as all hell. Once you've played it for 20 minutes or so, you would have experienced almost everything that this game has to offer. In fact, it's the scenery changes that keep you invested the most, and even though it looks kinda nice, it's actually one of the more forgettable licensed games going, in my opinion. Also, quick side note, the game was actually originally planned to be released for the Wii and the 3DS too. However, the development team decided to focus their efforts entirely on the released version instead, and therefore those other versions were cancelled, which if you ask me is probably a good thing. Okay, into the final two games now. After the popularity that was Simpsons tapped out, we had Family Guy The Quest for Stuff, which I would like to completely hate on, but if I did, I'd be a little bit of a hypocrite, because I was very much addicted to Tapped Out for a good while actually. That was until I got bored and instantly stopped playing. Well, this is that, but with a Family Guy paint job. There really isn't much else to say. If you like tapping on things to rebuild the town, waiting an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours a day, a week, a month, then this is for you. Light humour is mixed throughout, and well, if you do try it, you may get addicted like I did sadly. That was until I spent about £5 in real world money and almost instantly because of that lost interest, which always happens in games like this, and of course this, the perfectly titled and final game in the Family Guy list of video games, another freaking mobile game. Yep, that one's perfectly titled. As you can see, it's a Bejeweled type game. Honestly, I can't really hate on this one either in one video and then praise stuff like Dr. Mario and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine in another. Yeah, it's incredibly bog standard, easily the most bog standard on this entire list, and guys, like I said, that is it. For me, I wanted to make this video so that I could go back and re-experience the golden age of this show, back when the entire world seemed to be wearing Stewie Griffin one-liner t-shirts and pretty much everyone had a box set or two. Sadly, as time has gone on, so has Family Guy. on and on and on, because Fox simply just doesn't know when to stop, and that point is proven even further when looking at its games. One of them was pretty good, but almost every single other one was designed with money-grabbing business execs at the forefront and the gameplay coming in second. Sometimes it worked, but almost all of the time it didn't. But hey, why take my word for it? I'm just some random guy on the internet. Let's see what Seth had to say. Part of me thinks that Family Guy should have already ended. I think 7 seasons is about the right lifespan for a TV series. I talk to the fans in a way, and I'm kind of secretly hoping for them to say we're done with it. There are plenty of people who say the show is kind of over the hill, but still, the vast majority go pale in the face when I mention the possibility. Hey there guys, thank you so much for checking out this Family Guy related video. Yeah, I really enjoyed working on this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. So it's a part of the show where I'd like to give a massive shout out to all of my Patreons and YouTube memberships as well. If you want to be part of either of those lists, then make sure you check those links down below. But let's give an extra big shout out to the following people: Gary Pinkett, Mantis, Ryan Burford, Andrew Dalton, Ben Jackson, Jonathan Hayward, Kevin King, Christopher Turnbull, Phil Lowland, Samuel Smith, The Geeky Dad, Rovan Army, Ryan Holtz, Retro to Next Gen, Hawk89, Dina, Robertson Dunn, Adam Lefty Taylor, Intrigued Gaming, Tim Labonte, Asobi Quang DX, Tim Lum, Pixels.Limited, aka Samuel Victor, Conrad Constantine, Pretendo64, Creamy Elephant, Casey Garner, Blitz Hedgy, King Link Reviews, Shadow Dragon, Bew Wright, Jim Knapp, Shadow Dial, Game Apologist, Chris Applin, Wobbles and Bean, The Wonder Ducks, Ye Old Hamburglar, Dan Petit, Lucas Softail, Ronnie Method, SSWB, Solix Captor, Jeremy Rodriguez, Nick Pollard, Bram Perez, Marcus Kingmo Cut Tyndall, Richard Carter, aka Fantastic Dizzy, Todd Paul Float G, and of course, Petty Mew. If you guys want to get your name shouted out, get your name shown, come and see what I'm working on and all of the other stuff that I put out for these particular Patrons and YouTube memberships members, then, you know, check those links that you do see down below and the ones that you're going to be seeing on the screen as well. If you like the video, why not give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you prefer. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and all of the usual stuff. And oh, by the way, the people that are sharing my stuff on places like Reddit and random forums, I do see those, and I can't thank you guys enough. Doing stuff like that really does help spread the Slopes Game Room message out there to many more people. So thank you all so much. But I think that's enough rambling for now, isn't it? Yes, this is DJ Slopes signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.